For staff,
I have a comment.
Mr. Grasso.
My comments are probably going to be considered to be a little harsh by some, but I have to bring up something that's been concerning me for a great deal of time. This presentation tonight doesn't even come close to the requested, approved motion in the October 15th meeting of the Planning Commission, which is under page 1B, read and approved again tonight, where it was said, new tier maps, SB 236. Mr. Aludo and Mr. Rice presented a slideshow on the history and recommendations. Mr. Bunker made a motion to accept the map proposed by the staff, and it was seconded by Mr. Teeger. The motion with a vote of 3 to 4, with Mrs. Jones, Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Richard, and Mr. Grasso voting against it. A motion, listen to this carefully, was directed at the staff, and it said, and that was my words, a motion was then made by Mr. Richard to extend the work session to November 5th, 2012 Planning Commission meeting, with staff providing a revised map with clarification and alternate maps that was previously provided by BGI, along with an analysis. The members are to be provided by staff with specific concerns that they have, the staff is to be provided by members with specific concerns that they have prior to the meeting. The motion passed by a supermajority, 6 to 1. I ask all of you on the television and at this table, does this presentation respond to that specific motion that was approved? It does not. And what this is doing to me is it's mystifying me, it's disappointing me, and it's confusing me, and it upsets me. Because here's a valid motion that is designed to bring this matter to a comprehensive conclusion that is agreed by the majority. Now, approval of 6 to 1 of that specific motion is almost like an order to the director here. I feel that this is a pattern, Mr. Director, of the presentations that you've been making over time. And that's why I'm just at the point where I just must call it to your attention and to the rest of the members. These motions that you put forward that are in response to direct motions like we've just made seem to be your own ideas, because they don't come from this board as this one doesn't. And these are valid motions. And for instance, the county map, as you can see by the words on this piece of paper, was completely rejected out of hand by the majority, 6 to 1, of the planning staff. I mean, of the planning commission, not 6 to 1, excuse me, 4 to 3. Excuse me, beg your pardon, okay? And so the county, I just think that you have to kind of come a little closer to what we're doing. It's a question of who's running this operation. Is the Planning Commission making the conclusions, or are you, or is somebody else telling you what to do? I don't know, but this mystifies me, and it upsets me a great deal. The county map is filled with all kinds of designations and variances as to what we have agreed to, and the majority has been talking about for months. Hundreds of people have been out here expressing, not 6 or 7 or 12, but hundreds of people in here have been here expressing their views over what should be in these tiers. The law is pretty specific, although it does give us a great deal of options. But the Planning Commission has made a motion that was duly approved. Now, I don't think we should be going back, raking over something that's already been disapproved to try to make it perfect when we have other options that are on the table here tonight to be discussed. So my view is that we just move on with it and just not even go into a big, long discussion about how we're going to do this and how we're going to do this, to take and make something different, make something that is totally different than what is our will, to comply with or accept the county map. That's the way I feel. It just seems to reflect the views of somebody. This motion reflects the views of somebody else, and I wonder who it is. It's certainly not our majority. I wonder what authority the planning director could have to vary so much from a validly approved motion. So I just would move on, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to move that we just move on to considering alternative maps such as the BGI map.
Mr. Grasso, would it be okay? You raised some significant concerns about the planning department's response to your motion. I think before we entertain a motion, it would be appropriate to at least give the planning department the opportunity to respond to your concerns. Mr. Ball?
We have no comment. Well, we believe we addressed all of the concerns that were raised and presented the technical analysis based on the requirements of the legislation. We'd be glad to make any changes the Planning Commission feels are appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Chairman, if I may, since I was the author of the motion, let me just kind of, if I may, just summarize very quickly. I'd like to put the rest. Charles County has a good record for preservation, and I think there is a commitment, clearly a commitment to preservation. The county has a policy committed to preserving 50% of the county from development, and I believe has already preserved about 125,000+ acres. And I think what Mr. Grasso was alluding to is that after careful consideration, we were hoping to see tonight. My intent of the motion was to see an alternative map from the county, since we had the map that was presented to us on the 15th was turned down. The intent of my motion was to take those suggestions and recommendations that we provided to the county and to bring us back over a course of almost three weeks another map. That really, Mr. Ball, was the intent. So I think to some extent we fell a little short of that, and I appreciate Mr. Rice's comments. As always, he's very thorough, and I think he made a good faith effort in addressing some of the concerns, general concerns or questions that were brought up by the Commission. But in terms of the intent of tonight's meeting was to see two maps. One map, a redone county map, which I believe was would probably have been about version 4 or maybe version 5, and to then compare that with another alternative map. And so, but I would have to say, after careful consideration and review of all the tier maps as proposed by the planning staff and the alternative over the course of the last 30 days, I think we agreed tonight there are some similarities in many aspects of both maps, specifically in Tier 1.
There's no agreement with the Planning Commission.
Well, no, I'm giving my assessment, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman. I'm giving you my assessment. There are tremendous similarities. Mr. Rice even agrees to that in Tier 1 and Tier 2, with some minor variations. Specifically in Tier 2, however, we have a great, there is I think, a wider variation with respect to the staff's assessment and ours, and that is the Deferred Development District. We believe under Comprehensive Plan 2006 and the guidance given to you with the update of 2012, we clearly, was our intent to see the Deferred Development District in Tier 2. Now, the staff made an assessment that they believed it belonged in Tier 4, and clearly we think that is not the case. That was not our intent. I would also say that the alternative map does address that issue specifically. Regarding Tier 3 and Tier 4 designations, it is my belief anyway that Tier 3 is under-designated because the planning staff, in all the maps that you've provided us, the majority of all the land zoned AC or RC is put into Tier 4. Those parts of the county designated agricultural conservation should not, at least in my perspective, should not be exclusively interpreted as a mandate for conservation alone. It is, however, designated to allow the right to farm, the right to timber, but it does not negate the right for large lot development. So again, that's my perspective only, Mr. Wallace.
I'd like to just add a thought to that, if I could. Just to
well, if you wish to interrupt, go ahead. That's all right. That's all right, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, go ahead. You can make a comment. Sure, go ahead.
No, I can see that if you want to have those areas as Tier 3 and you consider them to have, the vision is to have those areas large lot development, that's fine. I think our concern would be continuing to be able to call them agriculture conservation in the comprehensive plan because the legislation is pretty clear that it can't be planned or zoned for agriculture or conservation. And that's fine. If that's your decision to do that, then we need to adjust the plan accordingly so that there's consistency.
Well, and I agree, and there should be consistency, and I think clearly, just for a point of discussion, I don't want to belabor this point, Mr. Chairman, but just to answer Mr. Ball's question, yes, I believe that clearly the agricultural conservation is not designed exclusively for conservation and or farming. What it is really one of the issues, certainly, is the ability for development of large lot developments. I mean, that is part of it. That is our zoning. That's our zoning.
No, that's not the zoning, but we can make it the zoning if that's the direction.
It's 1 to 3, 1 to 3, yeah. But
the zoning is agricultural.
I understand that, but within that, there is a right to develop large lot developments. There is to develop, yes, 1 to 3. Our density is 1 to 3. Okay, so that's
And the
that's
people
case.
we serve are the people I'm concerned about, so that they understand that. I frankly think that we should add large lot developments to the agricultural, rural, conservation, as it's written, and large lot developments. Because I'm talking about the people who own this land or who may buy it. They're going to know, I can do this, and by the way, I can do that too. I think that's
what we
really
would suggest is if you want to be Tier 3, we would call it rural residential, because that would be more reflective of your intention.
Yes.
You can't call it Tier 3 and keep the agricultural conservation designation, because the legislation is very clear about that.
Why?
Excuse me, Mr. Grasso, if
Okay.
Mr. Richard can continue, then you can have the floor after Mr. Richard.
Yeah, I'll get I'll get it finished. I'll get it finished. And I think another important factor we should remember, and that is in Tier 3, large lot developments will undergo a strenuous vetting process, much more so than what we currently have. Now, that is in the legislation. Its impact, its assessments now must really deal with things that we have not done in the past in terms of a matter of routine. And I think that's important to remember. So the concerns that somehow that additional acreage in Tier 3 will automatically result in some kind of explosion of so-called sprawl development, however you wish to characterize it, I think the legislation and this Planning Commission and perhaps future Planning Commissions will ensure that rigor is that evaluation process, how it impacts the county, financially and environmentally, transportation, all of those elements, I think provide the necessary safeguards, and I think SB 236 clearly does that. So again, I'd like to continue this discussion, and what I think, Mr. Preserving, and I'll conclude by simply saying preserving property rights, owners' rights, providing protection for Charles County farmers, and the value of their land, which I think is extremely important, has always been, again, I'm speaking for myself only, there's been that has been my intention to a large extent to clearly understand that property rights, protecting the farmers, protecting the value of their land, because that's all they have, and are not exposed to what I would consider in many cases SB 236, but it's the law, undue hardships. They are the individuals, they are the groups, they are the stakeholders that are going to be extremely impacted and affected on Tier 4, because that's really what this is all about, is Tier 4. Tier 1 and Tier 2, I think there are some minor variations between the two maps, but in a sense, this is about Tier 4 and how much acreage in the county is included in Tier 4. And I think, and also meeting the base requirements. We have an obligation to meet the base requirements under SB 236. We have a requirement to meet the law. And I think all SB 236 requires is that we establish 4 tiers, in essence. That's from again, I'm speaking only for myself, but I think establishing the 4 tiers. And I think Tier 3 is clearly under-designated. So therefore, Mr. Chairman, if we are to continue the discussion, I will make a motion so that we can, if I may.
Yeah, point of clarification, one of the things...
I have a motion on the floor.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
And one thing before...
Hasn't been seconded yet.
Yes.
Okay, I thought...
Before
I
we
wasn't aware
second
of
it,
the
because
motion
in at least the possible event that you are the person that seconds the motion, what I would like is clarification. In the presentation this evening, this other map that may at least be a part of a motion with respect to accepting or proposing, even in the materials for tonight, it shows that we refer to that map as the tier map submitted by the Balanced Growth Initiative. All of us here on the Planning Commission understand that the Balanced Growth Initiative has at least one paid representative that has come before the Planning Commission. And during the September 25th meeting, I believe it was, Mr. Richard, at that time, there were some criticism leveled towards Mr. Levy. And Mr. Richard, you forcefully, I'm paraphrasing here, you basically indicated that Mr. Levy's integrity, motives, beliefs, and record, at least for that meeting, were above reproach and virtually unquestionable. And during that meeting, it seemed at least that your beliefs about Mr. Levy's reputation and his actions, whether it's for BGI or for the county, at least during that meeting, trumped the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So, as you know, generally in our rules of practice and procedure, it requires that a member disclose ex parte contacts, and I'm not in any way suggesting there's some specific ex parte contacts, but I would like to hear for the record whether you'd be able to vote on whatever is presented this evening in a fair and objective manner on behalf of the county, or whether or not Mr. Levy's reputation, as you so described on September 24th, will in any way have an impact on your ability to be objective with regard to this issue.
Yeah.
Is that
Mr. Chair.
I'm just asking, I'm concerned.
is that a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a comment. You often refer to Mr. Levy as a paid consultant. Most of the people in this room, including staff, are paid. I don't understand the relevance of your continuing to question whether he's a paid consultant. He's a resident of this county.
Mr. Bunker is a paid environmentalist. I mean, what's the difference? People are all
well,
happy.
That you continue to
And I understand that, but I mean, I said,
paid consultant when everybody in this room,
Every
including
congressman
staff,
and
are paid.
every man in Congress who conducts a meeting with a special interest group would be disparaged by your comments.
And individually, we have our questions or concerns about the people that come before here, and I'm entitled to have my concern about that. And I just raised a concern about whether Mr. Richards could be objective or not. All he has to do is answer the question.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I clearly understand your question. I believe I am objective. So to answer your question, I believe clearly I can be objective in any decision I make. I make decisions that are, I believe, in the best interest of the people of this county. I've served the people in this county for well over 6 years on this commission, as well as the other commissions, resident for 37 years. And I think, yes, I can, to answer your question, I think you can put your concerns to rest that I can be objective. Now, we have different points of view. I mean, that's clearly. I think I've always made my points of view pretty are a matter of public record, so I don't think that's any secret. So to answer I will answer your question as a courtesy to you, and yes, I can be objective.
Thank you. Are there any